final session, and this is titled Making Sense Out of Venture. In this session, two founders will reflect on their paths into venture capital and company building, sharing the highs, lows, and pivotal lessons they learned along the way. They'll unpack how their experiences have shaped their perspectives on entrepreneurship and how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing what it means to build and scale a startup today. We guarantee that you will walk away with forward-looking insights into the future of entrepreneurship. So please join me in welcoming our moderator, Chacho Valadez, the founder of Endurance Advisory and previously worked at Techstars. Let's give it up, let's give it up! Then we have Justin Turk of Turk Ventures LLC. And then Brandon Cooper of Aphid. Got it right? Okay. Take it away, guys.
Here. How's everyone doing today? Good. Great. Well, thanks for coming out to this last session on this stage. I know it takes a lot of great endurance, if you will, to be here all day and enjoying a lot of great content. Want to quickly kick off this session just to kind of give an overview. We're going to be talking about sort of almost like different paths to building a company. You probably hear quite a bit in terms of, should I raise venture funding? Should I bootstrap my company? Should I do a mix of both? There's even something called seed strapping, so we're going to get into all that. But before we jump in, I just want to introduce our great panelists here. So I'll hand it over to Brandon Cooper, CEO of Aphid, to introduce himself, and then we'll go to Justin Turk.
Hello everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Brandon Cooper. I'm the CEO of Aphid. What we do is we create a digital clone of yourself, so when AI replaces you, the human behind it is actually compensated for the task and the monetary task that it does on the internet. So just kind of think of it as like a multiplier of yourself, where you can be everywhere on the internet at once. So that's me.
Thank you. Justin?
Check. Okay. Hello everyone. Justin Turk, CEO of Construct AI. Strategic financial intelligence leader for the commercial contractor market. $2 trillion GDP, 60% of contractors go out of business in 5 years or less. 80% don't know if they're cash flow positive until November of the year. We're using data from different platforms in their business to simulate outcomes. It makes sense not only for their business, but makes sense for the entire industry. I'm also chairman of the board of Logistics, first company I founded through the venture space, which we're going to talk about, which is a waste and asset management platform for the commercial construction market. I have a nonprofit called iCirca, where I support a lot of contractors, innovation and sustainability, infrastructure, recycling, construction, and association. Because as I went on my journey, I realized that startups aren't built or prepared to work with the procurement challenges of large enterprise organizations. So how can we cut through the fat, make sure talented people stay in that lane and continue to build and explore ways to change an industry that's heavily archaic. So a little bit about myself, but happy to be here.
Thanks so much. And just for reference too, for myself, I've spent the last 9 years as a pre-seed investor, most recently at Techstars. So one of the things I think about is you have a lot of these generational founders like Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, Estee Lauder, and the like. And when they first started their company, they weren't really asking themselves, can I build a company that's attractive to investors? And so I want to kick off with this question in terms of, when you both set out, what company did you want to build? And then also, how was that shaped by your background and experience? So Justin, I'll go to you.
So I have to talk about my background. Born and raised in the city of Detroit. When I was young, I grew up in a construction family. My father and my grandfather had a company called Turk's Baby, west side of Detroit. And I can remember being a 5-year-old after school sitting at the bar. I wasn't drinking, I was having a Sprite. And I can remember even thinking then that this was the company that I was going to inherit. And they were once the largest minority asphalt paving company in Michigan. They went out of business. Didn't understand it. So I decided when I was about to go to school, years later, I wasn't going into construction because they saw that carpet burn for them. My uncle convinced me to go into computer science. Went to computer science route undergrad. But I didn't stay too far from construction. Went back and got my master's. Spent 15 years in the commercial market here in Detroit, doing work here, M1 Rail, all the casinos, the Little Caesars Arena, Little Caesars headquarters, part of a lot of major projects here in Vegas, All of that led to me starting my first company because I saw that there was a massive problem and it was ripe for disruption. And I was just trying to change the way that we were actually servicing contractors in the waste and material market. It was a big liability. Can we clean up illegal dumping and actually be more profitable at the same time? So that was the hypothesis. And when I started that company, I remember I think about that guy now, I was like, what were you talking about? Because I literally thought, I'm gonna start this company, and just like Turk's paving, one day I would hand this company over to my son. But I realized early on that the market that I was trying to disrupt and the problem I was trying to solve was a massive problem that wasn't just built for something that was gonna be bootstrapped. Fortunately, I had a mentor here locally, Linda Fingerly, who has a venture firm in Ann Arbor, who helped me think through some of those things. But early on, I literally thought that I was going to be handing this company over to the next generation. And what I've learned since then, the best thing that I can hand over to the next generation is options. The ability to be free from constraints that usually come with having a job. So it's not necessarily the business. For me, it was about the cash flow that it created. And that changed my mindset about, when I think about venture, what I think about growing the scale of the company.
What, during those 15 years, the whole time you were working, did you think, one day I'm gonna start a company?
I did. I knew even the owner of the company I worked for actually invested. He invested in my friends and family around. I raised $140,000, and the president was one of my biggest investors. So I will say this, my advice real quick, when you treat somebody else's money like it's your own, they will respect you and they will respect what you're about to do next. That was something I learned early on working for him. And he taught me about being an asset and not being a liability. Be an asset and not be a liability. And I knew that when I was actually getting that investment from him, okay, this was something that was not necessarily a thought that I could actually build and continue to be working here, but I realized that if I was going to build the type of company that was going to disrupt the market, I needed more capital. But the problem we were solving was City Trade was going through bankruptcy, and a lot of people remember this. Two of the big three were going to federal government for funding. Ford had to sell off a ton of assets. Stellantis had to sell off a ton of assets. GM and Stellantis had to sell off a lot of assets. Ford actually started to rebuild their portfolio of real estate, and I worked on a lot of projects where they're actually selling their largest manufacturing facilities in the U.S., specifically in Michigan. And the things I learned on that project, can't speak to all of them. Some of them led to people getting in trouble with the law. What I realized was that this market, who was built in a lot of archaic processes and people ripping off each other, was ripe for disruption, and that was the problem I was trying to solve in logistics.
Thank you. And so, Brandon, same question. What kind of company do you want to build, and how was that shaped by your experience with David?
Yeah, so my background, just more so self-taught. I worked for Apple for 7 years as a senior technology advisor for 7 years. It sounds good, it looks good on a resume, but I've never just been a person who have loved 9-to-5 jobs. So my reason for creating AFIT was to disrupt the 9-to-5 because we live for weekends. We spend Monday through Friday doing the exact same thing. By the time we fight traffic home from work, we're helping our kids with homework or whatever it may be. Your day is over. I don't know about y'all, but this year has been on rapid speed. I mean, by the time I look up every day, it's like 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I don't know what's going on, but living this hamster wheel type of life for 40 years, and then you look up and say, well, man, did I miss these soccer games with my kids? Did I spend enough time with my spouse? Whatever that is for you. But for me in particular, I wanted to do some research to see what that looked like on paper to see, is it just me? We have family members who don't. They dread to go to work every single day. Most people die from Sunday to Monday from heart attacks because they have to go to work on Monday. And I looked at the data, and the data showed that the average person spends 90,000 hours at a job over a lifetime. 90,000. So it's like, I tried to imagine, like, all right, if I went into a job and I saw that counting down, it's in my cubicle, and I just watched it count down from 90,000 down to 0, I would die. So I wanted to say, what is taking up our time, and it's a job. And a job isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is if you're not doing what you actually love. I think a job is great if you're a teacher or you're a fireman and that's what you want to do, then that isn't the slavery of what you're trying to do. But if you're chasing that golden carrot, you're chasing the money, you have to realize that that's a dead end, and we know where that dead end is going. You don't want to be that person on the deathbed when you're older saying, man, I didn't really take that leap. I didn't really go after my dreams or the things that I wanted to go to. And people kind of scoff at garbage men or whoever, in society, when people love what they do. I think as a society we have to do better. But I segue that into AFID because what we're doing is allowing people to have digital versions of themselves carry out most of these tasks on the internet. So you as the human can take things at step 8, step 9, and take it from there. You can do business as usual. So this doesn't really go for people who are hands-on doing HVACs or whatever, but for most people who are moving online, this is an important company. AFID is one of the most important companies to be in existence because 300 million jobs are going to be taken by AI by the year 2030. And the 9 to 5 is going to be completely obsolete by the year 2035, give or take. So we want to be in position for the gig economy, which is where you're basically having supplemental income. So you're doing things on the internet outside of what you do day to day to make money.
Thanks for that. And so kind of we're on a panel talking about venture funding. So was there a specific moment sort of when the question of how to fund your company really came to surface?
Yes, so the problem was we saw the number for founders of color, less than 1% of VC goes to founders of color. Everyone isn't as lucky as Justin over here, Mr. Money Man over here. That number is staggering. I think it's like 0.48% that goes to founders of color. So it's really intimidating to even start our tech company as being a founder of color, right? So thinking about how to bootstrap, unfortunately, a lot of people in our communities don't have a lot of money for friends and family round. So that's a round where you're basically asking friends and family for money to kind of bootstrap the company. And then you have things like Kickstarter or Republic where you can crowdfund, but if you don't really have an angel investor to have 50,000 or 100,000 kind of start those campaigns, it ends up dead in the water. So it's like, what does that look like for a founder that's trying to bootstrap? But I didn't create the company with venture in mind. I just created it for the mission and purpose.
That's important. And I'm going to come back to how AI democratizes being able to start a company. But yeah, Justin, like, what was a specific moment you realized, hey, I got to fund my company? And then what were the factors that were in play for you and that you were thinking through?
Yeah. So I mentioned before, and I've started two companies, both venture backed. The first company I did a friends and family round. I wasn't paying myself for the first 4 years, and I was paying developers. And I thought, okay, I remember doing the business plan. It's like, we're going to be at $21 million in X amount of years. This is not as easy as hard as it looks. And then I realized that it's not about just what you're trying to build; it's about how you sell it, right? And the market I was going after, I was working with companies that were Fortune 500 companies, and I thought about the cycle to work with them, the cost to do business with them, the amount of time, energy, and effort that you're going to use, the infrastructure you need from the tech side of enterprise, all these things when you do B2B SaaS. And it was probably, I would say 3 years in when I said, okay, doing the research, I had a mentor, and I realized in order for us to do this effectively, and this is pre-AI, this is like before, when you had to hire, 5 developers to do the job of 1, which there's still room for venture in that model, but again, the cost of the deploy software, the timeline and the cost of it was a lot higher 5 years ago. And I realized that just doing the math, there was no way that we could sell enough to build and deliver what we needed to do to the market at scale. And we were fortunate enough, and Brandon mentioned this, we were the inaugural winner of Black Ambition. Like, I got that through Tech Town, so we won $1 million through the Black Ambition program nationally, which is for Earl Williams and Felicia Hatcher. Right after that happened, I had pitched to a lot of investors before Black Ambition here locally in the United States.
You know how many investors you pitched?
Oh, I pitched to hundreds. I'm talking about, I got a Excel spreadsheet, at least 200, 300, I was pitching to at this point. And we had done some convertible notes. Maybe at that point we raised a couple $100,000. I didn't get much traction. It's like, oh yeah, you're working with waste management, but you got 6-figure revenue, but then we went Black Ambition and people were banging down my door, right? And we actually oversubscribed around. And I remember learning that, wait a minute, we're the same company. We won an award, so you're telling me that all these people are interested in me because of something I won and some press that we got. So that changed my perspective on kind of how venture worked a little bit. We raised, our seed round at that point was $6 million for that company, raised just over $10 million. The company's still active. I moved to chairman of the board in the last year, dealing with a board, dealing with enterprise deals, and I'm even on calls. Even earlier today I was on a call with individuals in that company. I would say that I realized that venture has to be a tool, right? I think the thing that's important for us to realize, I don't like to talk of, we don't need venture. I'm talking about in our community. We say it too often, right? When you look at the numbers, last year, venture was a $350 billion worldwide beast. This year it's going to be about 200. It was 370 last year. It's going to be 250 this year. So venture is down about 37%. Venture's down. In the black community is down 71%. All right. If you look at executives that are in venture-backed companies, the number is actually 0%. Companies that do between $0 and $20 million. When I thought about my company Logistics, myself and my co-founder, who I've known for 5 years, were both black. So we were in the 0% of founders of executives in venture-backed companies. I'm not saying that venture is easy. I'm not saying that venture is absolute. Everyone must do it. What I'm saying is, if you look at the landscape of America and how capital is moved across industries, it is very dangerous for us as a society, as a community, to have this mentality that we're going to sit venture out. Because I can guarantee you that all of us have probably 80% of what we touch, feel, and do on a daily basis is venture backed. And that sounded real easy until Amazon went into the grocery store. And Amazon's not done. Like when you think about what the future state of small business is, it is owned by venture. So you have to ask yourself, if you have the ability to do a venture-backed company, you can disrupt the market, and you can be in a position where you can give back to your community, you can invest in people to do things that they want to do and be free. Are you one of the people that needs to go out and fight the behemoth that has been created? I, for one, believe I'm one of those people. I don't know how many people are. I continue to believe that no matter what statistics are, no matter what the stats are, I fully believe that the black community has to have a place in venture because we are the most creative, we're the most innovative, and if we don't use venture to scale some of these ideas, not all of them, it will be stolen by somebody who does.
Here. So I want to double click on something you said that really is just selling yourself. And Don Valentine, who started Sequoia Capital, one of the OG venture funds, said money flows as a function of story. And Steve Jobs says that the most powerful person in the world is a storyteller. So can you react to that for me a bit with your fundraising journey and storytelling, how that played a role?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of pitch competitions, and a lot of our friends right now are pitching for the big bet a few blocks away, and they're doing 2-minute pitches. And I talked to a few of them before they went up, and I said, when you're doing a 2-minute pitch, it is not a data conversation. It is not a numbers conversation. It is 100% an emotional conversation to connect to somebody on the other side of that table, because you want them to feel that the pain and the problem that you have is so big that you're willing to go through a wall to solve it. And I think for me as a storyteller, anybody who's a storyteller, I think one of the best ones I've heard recently was at Black Tech Week, which is Fawn Weaver. Amazing storyteller. Like her ability to tell a story about her business and what she's overcome and what she's trying to build is legendary. And when you think about raising capital, it is 100% telling an emotional story, because guess what? It's not gonna go perfect. The ability for you to emotionally connect to an investor is really important. It's really one of the most important aspects of venture. That's why most venture capital goes to people who you're referred to. It's in your network. So you have to ask yourself, if I'm a black person and I go into an office and I am trying to make an emotional connection to a person who is not black, am I at a deficit at day one? Absolutely, you are. That doesn't mean it's impossible. But the reality is you have to make an emotional connection to someone for them to be willing to give money and to invest in what you do, because they're investing in a person. So no matter what statistics are, no matter what the problem is you're trying to solve, absolutely, are you the person best equipped to do that? That, most of the time, comes down to an emotional decision. I believe it's the only way to pitch and try to invest.
I agree. And Brandon, can you talk to us a bit about how AI is changing the game when it comes to this conversation of raising venture or being able to get further down the road leveraging AI, whether you decide to raise funding or not?
Yeah, so what's happening right now with AI for founders, especially for founders of color, is they're able to use artificial intelligence to overcome the technical barriers that were there before. So if you're not a founder who knows how to code, there are a lot of tools that exist right now to help you at least build out a canvas, build out a logo. These things happen in seconds. And Justin, I'm sure you know this, when you're dealing with developers as a startup founder, let's say you do raise 100K or 200K, more than likely you're gonna end up finding developers who are gonna give you crappy code, and then you waste all of that money, right? You waste a lot of that time. And then the coming soon becomes 1 year, year and a half, you're trying to find the right CTO, people leave, because developers are construction workers. So what venture capitalists don't really get it, because I think every venture capitalist should be a founder first, so they understand what it's like. But that's like saying, well, I want to open a restaurant, but go ahead and get revenue and people to come in for your food. They're like, well, I have to pay the construction workers to build the building, right? You need the capital. So venture capitalists are calling themselves pre-seed investors, and they're looking for these metrics for revenue and everything else. Stop calling yourself a pre-seed investor, right? Like you're seed and beyond. You're looking for certain traction. So I think the landscape of what's happening right now with AI is it's just like the music industry. So the music industry years ago, you would want to get signed to a big record label like Universal, Def Jam, Rockefeller, wherever it may be, or Sony. But what's happening now with founders is they're going to be a lot more independent. They're going to have smaller teams, so they're going to have 3 to 5 people. You can get a fractional CTO, fractional CFO, and with maybe 3 to 5 people on your team, you'll be able to at least create that MVP, which is a minimal viable product. That's the first version of your application that you want to release to the general public. And then you can now use that to create leverage with those investors. Because all they're going to do is tell you the same thing. You're going to run that list, you're going to cold email them and send them pitch decks, and they're going to say, oh, just come back to us once you have revenue and traction. And now you're frustrated. You're like, what's going on? What's wrong? I know I have the next Uber or Airbnb. It's not personal, but investors have a different lens. They don't care about certain things that you care about. They see it from a numbers perspective. Most of them don't even have vision. They just want to join the popularity contest, just like they did with Justin when he won Black Ambition. He's like, why are you guys calling me now, right? So you want to be the attractive girl in high school that everyone wants to date. That's how you have to create your company, right? Like, who's like, oh, can you please date me? Can you please go out with me? Like, that's not attractive, right? You want to say, well, I know the confidence that I have in myself. So by being able to utilize AI now, these founders are now going to be independent and keep all of the money. See, TLC went diamond and they sold 10 million records, but the record label took everything. And then you also have the risk if you don't understand how to work your legal agreements with your board. You'll see a lot of founders get ousted out of the companies they created. I've seen great founders not know how to work their terms, and they end up with nothing. And these companies are billion-dollar company, unicorn companies. And the person who was up 3, 4 in the morning doesn't have anything to show for it. So that's the danger of taking venture, because I'm not against what Justin said. I'm just talking on the other side of what this could look like for in the future. But I would definitely recommend using a lot of AI tools that exist right now to help assist you in coding, and take that to a fractional CTO and get to market as fast as you can.
I have a follow-up question there. So, like, how do you balance? Because I hear this a lot in terms of with founders. It's like what I'm hearing is like, I need to build a company that's attractive for investors. And how do you balance that with, hey, I just need to build a company that's true to my mission and what I want to do, with or without investors?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So if you're a founder and you're about business, you should be focused on revenue users anyway. Because if you're able to at least build it and put it out there, because great artists ship. I know you want the perfect product and you want to put out a version 5, but it's just best to try to get at least a version 1 that's decent, that won't give you super bad reviews. But ultimately, you want to get to market as fast as you possibly can. So I think, I'm going to say how I want to preface this here. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, like how do you balance basically building a company that's for you and your mission versus one that you think will
Or
be attractive to
investors,
investors?
right. So yes, if you're building for revenue and users, you're creating leverage for investors, and now you at least have the option to tell them no. So they're knocking on your door now, opposed to saying, or do I need to go to them, right? I'm doing 250,000 MRR, right? Or I'm doing $5 million annually with my company. Now you have the option to say, am I able to pay myself from this revenue? Am I able to create the servers and run the servers, the dedicated servers that I need to keep the company at scale? And then you can go to venture for Series A to help you become from $100 million company up to a $1 billion company. Venture is going to help you scale that up to get those employees, the benefits, and everything you need to attract your company to become an Uber or Airbnb.
So I've got, I'm gonna tell a quick story because of the parallel between my two companies. So first company, when I can remember pre-COVID, that I was Headed to Chicago to have a big meeting with Waste Management. I partnered with an organization here. I was working full time, and they decided they were going to build this fully functional, clickable prototype for me in Figma. And it was going to cost me about 100 grand back then. It's actually funny to talk about. This is 5 years ago, 100 grand, right? 2 days before the event, they decided to say, hey, Justin, we love what you're doing so much that we aren't going to give you the prototype unless you give us a third of your company because we want to build the rest of your software out. I said, I'm not going to tell you what I said actually, but I said no, respectfully. And the meeting was actually canceled because somebody in the building got COVID. This is 2020. This is March 2020. So investment in tech was substantially, and like it's a whole different landscape of adventure. Fast forward to now, I started a new company earlier this year. I did the prototype myself. I built it with AI tools. I raised money with a prototype that I built myself. I went out and I got first contracts with a prototype I built myself because I focused specifically on the problem, and I knew the speed to deliver software is dramatically faster. So I agree with Brandon, like the speed to deliver software is drastically faster. And I will say this, we are not in an age where you need to burn money at all costs in venture. We're in a different timeline. When I say use venture to get the cash flow positive as quickly as you can. When you're raising hundreds of millions of dollars in this landscape, any landscape, it's probably time for you to leave the company. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. And that's probably another conversation, but I'm saying the terms that come with hundreds of millions of dollars aren't necessarily favorable for founders most times. In this landscape, you should be able to do more with less. But the initial lift off is really still hard. I mean, the reality is, I work in a building, with founders who are trying to figure out how to pay next month's rent. I'm working in buildings with people who are, scrapping and clawing to get a piece of code or get something done because they don't have the wherewithal and they want to work B2B, but they got to go through a SOC 2 compliance. You work with founders that have to go through, 6-month lead time to get their first deal because they decided to go the enterprise route. These are the realities that people deal with every day. So when we say don't use venture, it's like, whose money do you use? Because if you look at it, Mike Ilitch built a Little Caesars Arena. You know what he built that way? Somebody else's money. So when we keep having this mentality that I'm gonna do it myself, I'm gonna get it out the mud, the money that they're getting, the other people are getting, if you look at the flywheel of how it got there, it's part of your money, right? There's massive companies right now that were built on the backs of taxpayers' money, and they're private companies. They IPO, and they have stockholders. They're public companies now. These companies are built on the back of taxpayers' money. I'm not saying that venture is for everybody. I'm not, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a very dangerous game. It is. You gotta know your term sheets. You gotta understand how to deal with a board. You gotta understand liquidation prices. You gotta understand preferred overhead. You gotta understand when it's time for you to step out of the seat and replace it with somebody else. We need to be educated on all those things. But what we don't need to start having a conversation is that it's not right to build something with other people's money. Because if you look at the largest companies in this world, they always successfully use other people's money to get this massive outcome. Snapchat, $26 billion. Canva, worth $50 billion. Apple, we can talk about Apple being great. They started with a check for $250,000. They didn't start from somebody from their own money. They got money to start a company. So I'm not saying to go get everybody's money, but we need to stop pretending that the money that's circulating in this economy is not yours, because guess what the goal is? The goal is for you to be so successful that you become a venture capitalist. You may not call yourself that, but you want to make so much money that you actually invest in other people to do things the right way with a really reasonable return. That's your goal. That's one of my goals. I think everybody will feel good about themselves. So this idea that we don't want to get venture capital, but we want to be venture capitalists, what do we want to be in life?
Also, JT, picking the right investor is almost as like people can come with a check, but you don't really know who you're getting into bed with until you live with them. And when I say live with them, I mean they're on your cap table, and then people can put their best face forward, but then eventually just turn on you like, why is this person being an a-hole out of nowhere? And now you're stuck with that bad investor. So keeping good people in your company. So I don't even think running a company like capital is one that's going to keep the company going. But if you have bad apples and bad people in your company, you're going to poison the entire fishbowl. So keeping the bad people out is really, really important.
Absolutely. And before my next question, it's interesting because I just saw Anthropic and Claude. You can use Claude Code directly with Figma now.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can.
So you would have saved yourself $100,000. Let's talk a bit about kind of stepping back a bit, which maybe I should have started the conversation with this. What's what's the purpose of venture capital? And so I have this quote from Chris Paik, who started a venture fund in New York called Pace Capital. And he said that venture is purpose-built for companies that are capitalizing on dam-breaking moments. So shifts in technology, regulation, society, and he likened it to radioactive isotopes. They throw off a huge amount of energy, but eventually they decay. And so without this strong answer to the question, why now, venture actually isn't the right instrument. So like, how do you think about market timing, particularly when it comes to venture and raising venture?
Yeah, I think that's a great quote, and that kind of sums it up perfectly, because the reality is venture is not for everyone. But what you have to ask yourself is, what is your defensible moat? And how quickly can you actually get to sales, repeatable business? And if there's a route where you can do that without any money from outside your organization, take that route. I know a lot of successful founders who have bootstrap companies, and they're doing millions of dollars in revenue right now. And they're looking right at the decision matrix where I need capital, and the bank is saying that I have to put up my personal goods for this business. Now, okay, let's think about this. Businesses are really hard. Like, the success rate of a business is really low. So in a world where you're likely to fail, what you're saying is you're about to put your house and all your family's future into that business because you don't want to give any portion of it to somebody else. I think we got to pause for that. Now, I'm only saying that to say, if the business is a venture-backed business, how big is the TAM? Who are your competitors? Are you the right person to take this company to market? Is the problem big enough worth solving that people are willing to pay for it? Are they willing to pay? What type of payment are they going to give you for that? All the things you should be finding out before you spend $1 on investment on technology, before you have a meeting. These are all things that you can find in your community, at work, whatever it may be. But venture is about solving problems at scale, right? And we're talking about, when we say scale, we're talking about problems that are in the billions. We're not talking about problems in the millions. And they affect large entities, or they affect large amounts of people, right? So when you look at that type of landscape, you have to have a decision matrix to decide, am I in the venture route? And then I would have double checked that with individuals. Don't go to the investor and be like, should I be venture backed? Because they may say, yeah, great, here's your check. Eventually they're gonna take all of your business. Make sure you have mentors, people, these colleagues that you can have to just kind of double check what you're thinking and run this playbook by them and really do a lot of research on the problem, and then look at other companies that did it like you, what you're trying to do. And like Brandon is saying, the cost of technology is down dramatically. I'm talking about not just the ability to develop code, I'm talking about DevOps, front end, back end, everything, the cost is dramatically down. So surely technology is not the differentiator. So we should stop thinking that tech is the differentiator in startup. It really is your ability to solve a problem and your ability to have a moat and do it at scale and speed.
And you can even just ask ChatGPT as a thought partner, hey, I'm trying to build a venture-backed company. Can you sort of stress test this for me? Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, it's never been a better time to be a founder. I'm sure if we had these tools a long time ago, we would have saved a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. But I think based on what he said about just the timing in the market, timing is everything. A great investor is an investor that can have the foresight to see what's coming, or see a founder to say, well, I don't understand the industry, but I believe in Justin and Chacho, so I'm going to go ahead and invest it. That's what a lot of investors have to understand, because by the time it's proven, especially for me as a founder, I kind of tell investors, and this is, a lot of people aren't going to agree with it, but if a person passes on me, that's it for them. I need them to believe in me, because when the money isn't right, they're going to turn on you later. So you need an investor who is going to believe in you and just say, look, I don't really understand what you're doing with your company, but it makes sense to me what you're trying to tackle. I want to invest in you, Justin. I want to invest in you, Chacho. I want to invest in you, Brandon. And if you can't find an investor like that, because they'll give you the tell-all tale kind of in those initial meetings, you have to look for these red flag signs. Anything can happen, but just try to do your best to be an energy reader and to read the energy of the people that you're talking to. And that way you can trust them a lot later on. But I think a lot is going to change in terms of investing, especially with Web3. Everything is going to be on a blockchain. So all transactions are going to be using stable coins, cryptocurrency. You're going to see a lot of founders be able to raise a lot of money on the Web3 side on crypto. People think it's a fad, it kind of comes and goes, but that's something that I do a lot of exploration on in terms of like Solana, Ethereum, and other people who are interested and want to know more about crypto.
Thank you, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself. I want to read something from one of my favorite investors, Ho Nam from Altos Ventures. He said, the number one rule we have at Altos is to be able to control our destiny. We're trying to protect the founders. If they keep running out of money, they lose control of their life's mission. Life's mission is a really key term there. We want them to stay in control, not the investors. So, Justin, what does controlling your destiny look like in your journey?
Great question. I think this is a great way to segue. I'd say that's a really good question. I'd say freedom, right? When you want to build something, you go out and solve a problem. And Brandon mentioned this about be careful when you shake hands with business. When you get an investor, this relationship is not a 1-year relationship. Most likely, this is a 5 to 7 year relationship. So, what I think about what that looks like for me is the ability for me to not be constrained to what I thought I would build, right? Not saying that because I started this company, we're actually going to hit this and this is the bullseye, but have the confidence to have the support system around me that we're about to go on a journey, because this journey is about solving a problem, and you can solve a problem in a lot of different ways. But on this journey in life, we're going to spend a lot of time going through it. We're going to have these ups and downs, but we're going to be able to look back and say that we started on this mission and we fulfilled our goal. Now, part of my goal is financial freedom, absolutely.
Yeah.
If it doesn't involve you being financially free, then it's not the right mission. I don't care what they tell you. But the ability for you to go out and have people who support you and understand that it takes not only liberty and flexibility to build a company, but to deliver and solve a problem. I want to make sure those people are in my corner. I encourage that. I cultivate that list. I've got lessons learned about people who necessarily want in my best interest and who are. If you want to validate that and kind of check it all the time. But having that freedom, that ability to dream and build and not be disrupted. I think one of my mentors, Alicia Hatcher, says it best. Who are you uninterrupted? She asks that every time I see her, every time she gets a chance to speak. She's the CEO of Black Ambition. And you think about, man, if you look at the landscape, there's so much trauma in our communities when we think about what we need to build. The ability to build gets clouded when you don't have the resources to take care of home, to take care of personal life. But when you have, I'm not saying unlimited amounts, but when you have the ability to focus on a problem that you're about to solve, and the talent and the group and the wherewithal to do it, to me that is true freedom and it's true liberty. And I think the more of us that have that opportunity, not only for ourselves, but the ability down the road to give that and impart it to somebody else, then we really create true equity in our communities. And that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, what you're saying kind of reminds me of this quote from Michael Dell, who started Dell Computers. And he's like, I'll be thinking about Dell after I'm dead. Which is kind of funny. Yeah, Brandon, what does controlling your destiny look like for you? And then once Brandon's done answering this, we're going to open the floor to Q&A because I think we have a few more minutes left.
Yeah, so to me, if you were to ask me this last year or maybe 2 years ago, I'll have a different answer. My answer now is just realizing that I'm not really in control. It's, I'm putting a lot more into God to say, all right, well, I'm being guided. I just kind of feel like I'm being guided, where God is just taking me as a vessel and sharing the information to people that you just paid for, right? Like this information that we're talking about, just being a great vessel, being a good human is really, really important. And I think trying to relinquish needing to control is a form of freedom in itself. So, because we try to make things go the way we want to, and like what's happening, and we kind of force it, and we go into fight or flight. Fight or flight is a beast as a founder. Like it's really, really hard to be in survival mode when you're trying to figure out how to feed yourself. If you have a spouse and a family, it is extremely difficult when you're trying to do that and build a company. So that's why JT is saying, like, go get venture where you can pay yourself. And the last thing you need to be worrying about is your water bill, right? But for me, that destiny is just being me, being free, and being able to create without bringing someone in that's hovering over me like they're my boss. Like, no, I'm running the show, but I don't need the control.
Yeah, thanks. That's it from my end. I can ask them more, of course, but I want to open the floor, see if we have any questions from folks.
guys for this. Everything's been great. Brandon, I have a question for you. You mentioned cryptocurrency and everything being on the blockchain. In your mind, because I'll get a different answer from this from everybody, what is the timeline that you expect that in the US that conversion is going to happen at least 50%?
Great question. It's been a lot slower than I thought it was going to be. I thought by now everything would have kicked in by now. Based at this current rate, I think we're about 5 to 7 years away from. It's Bitcoin is in terms of market penetration is at a pretty good spot. People know of it, but when you actually look at the holders, when people have significant holdings, it's a really, really low amount. And then when you think about you're not able to buy coffee with Ethereum or XRP or any of these other cryptocurrencies yet. So right now, people who are investing in cryptocurrency that's like investing in stocks before they hit the stock market for the general public. So everything that you see that's 6 cent, 2 cent, low market caps, just think of when that 2 cent a pop is now worth $17 each, and everyone is trading crypto like they're trading stocks. So that's not financial advice, but just as a little bug on the side. But I think about 5 to 7 years, regulation. With the Trump administration, he's been pro-crypto, so he's really put that forward. Gary Gensler was against it. He's the one that was stifling innovation in the United States. A lot of companies have to go outside of the country to create foundations and everything and to raise. That's why you don't see ICOs in the United States, which is basically like an IPO for crypto. But it's going to ignite really, really fast. It's just we have to get the weed out the bad, fraudulent things that are happening, like FTX. Fraud is fraud. It's not crypto fraud. It's just fraud. But we have to get the, like Yeezy, Kanye just did a token and it goes up and then it drops. All of these things are bad for the market, but real world utility is going to kick in, I think, about 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of frothiness and speculation when it comes to crypto. Any other questions from folks?
This question is for Brandon. This question is for Brandon. In regards to AFID, I know you mentioned that the whole purpose of your company is to create a digital version of yourself, so your digital copy is able to go off on the internet and do things on your behalf. So what type of applications will we be able to deploy our digital self on in order for us to make residual income?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, so AFID is creating the engine based upon what it is that you want it to do for you. So the same way that I'm going to use my clone is going to be different from the way that Chacho is going to use his clone. So if Chacho is, for instance, a real estate agent, he's going to ingest his information into his clone to say what he typically does to clients and customers on a daily basis. So now Chacho is going to be able to look at his personalized chatbot and say, okay, my clone was able to handle a conversation up to step 8. And guess what? Chacho was able to watch Netflix because his clone is taking care of scheduling and everything on his calendar. Now he can take it from step 8 and go from there. So it can sell his services or whatever it is that he's selling through a personalized chatbot. So that's our go-to-market. But the next phase is where you can deploy these clones into different environments to do other things outside of what it is that you actually do. So we're focused on the gig economy. That's going to be ultimately if you want to trade stocks automatically, trade crypto automatically. It's going to incorporate sports betting use cases. And you don't even have to have any knowledge on it. You're going to be able to use what's called hive mind collective intelligence. So you can basically pull from the collective on information to make decisions based on the ways that you want to monetize your income. You'll never have to go through different tabs on the internet. AFID is going to basically pull from third-party websites. When you train those clones to work in those websites, it's going to push the information back to you as the human and show you how much money you made off each task.
Thanks, Brandon. I think we had a question way in the back, the green, and then one behind this gentleman as well. Shout out to the mic runner.
Hey, thanks for your presentation here. It was definitely a pleasure just listening to your stories. I'm a 2-time founder and thinking about VC here. Question for you guys is, how ready were you to accept that VC money? And really, what are some of the challenges and like number one, top of mind for you when you did take that money?
Justin?
Our question is how ready was I to accept money? So first time I went venture, and this was a phase. This is 2020, 2021. For people who were in that phase, this is when everything was about valuation. So like it was like how much can your company be valued at? Like that was like how much can you raise and how much was the value? Because at that point money was cheap and it was burn money at all costs because eventually you would be able to turn a profit way down the road. And this is when the landscape was like CD. I was not ready. That's the first time being a founder. Like I think about all the mistakes I made, a significant amount of tech debt, hiring people in different roles before we really had product market fit. I think you learn how to think. This is why second time founders have a considerable higher success rate than first time founders. So like don't think that you're just gonna go venture and it's gonna work out well. Like I'm not saying that. I'm saying we have a couple venture people in here so they may not want to hear this, but make mistakes with other people's money. Right? That's a thing. That is a thing. That's why investors invest in second-time founders at a higher rate and at better valuation because they learn a lot the first time. So it's okay to go through that route. I did a lot of things wrong, a ton of things. The second time, I literally had a different perspective on the problem I was trying to solve, the cost to get, how much money I was going to invest before I went in front of venture, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with that money, and I already had contracts in mind. Like I think just from experience, understanding the cost to deploy your software, I think the biggest challenge that I learned, the big lesson that I learned, and I didn't necessarily do it wrong. The first time I did emphasize it, was the importance when you're talking about venture is to find a distribution channel. Like, no matter how much money you raise, you have to figure out a force multiplier in your business. And for me, it was when I think about delivering, deploying my software, where could I go where I could get a one-to-many sale, a one-to-many signal that my problem was right. And if you can find those channels early on, you can cut through a lot of the mistakes and actually get the traction a lot faster. So I would encourage everybody, if you're in a business and you're doing venture, and the goal is that you're gonna go one by one, you may wanna rethink if that's venture, unless the ACV, which is annual contract value, is like extremely high. So I think finding multipliers in your business, like AI is a multiplier. Like I can tell you, you can do a lot with AI as a multiplier in your business. You couldn't. The ability for a founder to find those multipliers in business, which is something I didn't do, I think is really important. I can tell you from the first time to this time, totally different landscape, totally different perspective on it. So I encourage you, when you do go the third time, I'm sure you've got enough war wounds that you'll do a lot of things, not necessarily right, but you'll know what not to do, which is probably more important.
Oh yeah. I think we have one last question here in the back.
You guys share so much amazing information in the business space. And as I've been in business space the last few years, there are some things that I've changed personally. So what is that one thing that you wish you would have done and told your younger self back then that you changed now?
This question, that's a good question. The one thing I would have done, and I don't know if it's one thing. I'll say this. There's a lot of things. And this is not just personal or professional. I would say in life, do not chase talent, chase integrity. A lot of times we hire talent because we think that talent wins and supersedes the ability to work well with individuals. I'm talking about investors, I'm talking about team members, I'm talking about partners in life, whatever it may be. I'm saying that this world is extremely difficult and the likelihood for success in all facets of our life is very low. You should go with people that you enjoy being around. I've made many decisions where I sacrificed integrity, not my own integrity, but I realized I was working with people that I probably didn't like, but they were extremely talented and it came back to bite me every single time, right? We hire for these really strong technical skills, but we fire for soft skills. And I think the biggest lesson you can learn is do not value talent over integrity. The fabric of a person is way more important than the talent that they can produce.
Yeah, actually, so Charlie Munger says that trust is the greatest economic force, which is just spot on. I'm actually going to answer this question too. And for me, it would be to cultivate my curiosity. So there's a lot of things that I'm interested in that maybe aren't directly related to business. but just like continuing to follow those breadcrumbs of like curiosity leads down roads and paths that I didn't even know were possible. And I think like learning from, you can learn so much more from reading Sam Walton's Made in America than by reading the latest business book on who knows what. But Brandon, I'll leave you with the final word.
As a founder, it's different now because we have AI to code, but then it would have been teaching myself to code a lot more and just be able to be a lot more hands-on. Mark Zuckerberg is a technical founder. He's able to ship on his own. He didn't have to rely on other people. So that's something that's from a technical side of things. But ultimately, I wouldn't do anything different because I've learned so much, but I think these two have hit the nail on the head. I think it's just surrounding yourself around great people and the team. Serena Williams has a nutritionist, Tom Brady had a home coach. These people are the best in the world. So your team is going to be the most important thing. You have to focus on having a really, really great and loyal team. And I think that is what propels people into success.
Well, thanks guys, it was a great conversation.
Thank y'all.